Today we are going to paint 10 different pumpkins of all shapes and colors. Hi friends, I'm Olga Koelsch, watercolor artist, teacher and a book author. Welcome to my studio. When we start painting pumpkins, first of all let's find a spot where a stem will connect to the body of the pumpkin. And then with the tip of the brush, let's find the place for the central, so to say, central spot. You can apply a little bit more pressure on your brush in the bottom. And then let's arrange other details around. Pumpkins, they have very different shapes. So try to add some variety. Some parts of them are visible, some parts are not. Basically, you create, so to say, the C shapes. You just connect them one to another, and then once you set up your pumpkin future shape, let's add some shades. Sun shines from top left. That means that the opposite side will be mostly in the shade, and of course the bottom of the pumpkin, because the upper part will be more in the light and light would not get into the bottom of the pumpkin. So you can easily add more darkness into the bottom of the pumpkin. I will keep this area so we can later on add the stem. I just slide my brush from bottom to top to create texture. Basically, I just drag out the color. And if your paper has some texture as mine, it will create these organic moves. Now, to divide these parts, you can add more of darker color in between. For example, burnt sienna is always a good idea for when you paint pumpkins or any autumn elements. Don't afraid of adding darker tones. It will create nice contrast. You can vary it. Use just the same color as you did for the body, so to say, for the background, just to create the shades. Dry a brush with a paper towel and drag out again a little bit of the darker color onto the top, from top to bottom, following the direction of each part. And now let's paint the stem. For the contrast, I will paint it in green. Firstly, let's set up the shape. I think it can look in that direction. Let's fill it in with light mix and leave some white spots around. Then add shades in the most darker parts, which are hidden from the light. Basically, it's all the right side and the cut. And then you can just add just some stripes with the tip of your brush. Soften a little bit everything with clean brush. And check out where there may be some shades are missing. For example, right here. And a little bit here. You can add just a hint of the same color from the body of the pumpkin into the stem to connect everything. And now you have a pumpkin. Now let's paint a white pumpkin with some texture. Don't really have white. We have white paper, and I will very much dilute my green. I have perlin green, grayish green right here. And the shape will be pretty simple. It will be a round pumpkin. So I will, with the tip of the brush, very light mix, I will just prepare the shape. I add a little bit more of pressure on my brush in the bottom, because the bottom is in the shade. The bottom of pumpkin will be more dark. Then I wash my brush. Oh, still a little bit of red here. Wash my brush and I will soften the edge. I will soften this wash. I will add a little bit more shade in the right part. Very gentle, because it's in principle we consider this as a white pumpkin. And while this area is getting dry, let's paint a tail. The pumpkin will be mostly red, therefore I suggest to add some contrast and create nice tail in some warm colors, in orange, raw sienna. I use raw sienna now. And I would like to add some curve. But basically we repeat the same what we did before. I add some lines, long lines along this tail. You can mix them a little bit with the same green in the bottom, so it will organically connect. And you can even add a small, nice little green touch at the very end. Now pumpkin is dry. Let's add some texture. I will flatten my brush, my synthetic brush. I dab into my green mix. It's cobalt green. Flatten my brush, and I will move my brush, dry brush, creating brush strokes. You can turn your brush in different directions. That will create nicer texture. One, so to say, line, another line. Try to remove excess water if it is too watery. What we need is really nice dry brush texture. Turn your brush in different directions. Avoid being too symmetrical, and then just bring all these lines organically down. If you have some references, follow your references. they can give you nice ideas of how all these ornaments are placed on pumpkins. Everyone is very different. Always flatten your brush so it will add more interesting texture. One more. I start a little bit flat with the rib of my flattened brush, and then I turn it. I hardly touch the paper. You see, it's all just very super bright, super dry brush strokes. You can add a little bit more contrast and color in the right side because of the shade. It's a little bit darker here, just a little bit. Same in the bottom. And a little bit, just few touches in between the lines. It will look more organically, I would say. About this. Now let's just add a little bit more weight into the bottom of our pumpkin, so it will be staying on the ground like this. And now let's add more texture into the stem. I will use burnt sienna and add a few more crispy lines with almost dry brush, because dry brush creates this nice dry texture of dried tail. Now let's paint a yellow pumpkin with small little bulbs on it. Of course, you can paint not yellow or green, often happens with this. Let's find the spot where pumpkin connects to the stem, or the other way around. Yes, so it doesn't matter, that's the spot. Then we shape a little bit our future pumpkin. It will be a little bit on the side, a line on its side. So then you can even map out few parts. So it will be a little bit easier to set up the shape. Just like this. And let's divide also this one. About this. This is nice. This looks lovely. Now let's wash our brush. Soften a little bit all these outlines. Remember that the bottom part is darker, so you can add more and more yellow. Be careful with yellow. It's better to start painting very light, because it will be easier for you to get to darker color, darker tones with yellow. Yellow has very short range between values, so the lighter you start, the easier it will be to you. So just shaping. Right now at this stage I'm just shaping my future pumpkin. I let the body of the pumpkin dry, and I will prepare the tail part just to save a little bit the time while we're waiting when it's dry. I imagine that it will be pretty bold, big one, big and short, and will be the cut will be like this. I think it's just my favorite part to paint all these different stems. You add strokes, you add the cut, some details. For now, just leave it like this. We can add shades a little bit later. And now I suggest you, if you paint with yellow, I suggest you to take raw sienna if you have, or if you don't, maybe mix yellow with orange and with a hint of burnt sienna to get a little bit darker tone. Because what we are painting now, we are not painting bulbs, we are painting the shade of the bulbs. The bubbles. The sun shines from that direction, therefore imagine there will be some bubbles here that will create shade on this part. It doesn't matter whether your surface is wet or already not, it will create nice different shade texture. Right now it looks a little bit weird, but that's all right. Apply a little bit more pressure. Distribute them differently. Maybe small. Also the size should be different. Should vary a little bit. Maybe the last one here and one big guy here. Now I wash my brush, dry it with a paper towel, go around, soften a little bit these shades when necessary. It's important that all your shades look in one direction, then it will look natural. Soften a little bit. Now take yellow, the one which you use for the body of the brush, and add a little bit more in these bubbles, but always try to keep some untouched light or even white spot, because it's always when we paint round objects, there is a small spot of very bright sunlight of light which our eye see as mostly white part. Let's add one nice cute bulb here and there, so on the side. And now it already looks lovely. We can start to add more shades, of course, firstly underneath all the bulbs and around. Start from the bottom of your pumpkin. Wash your brush, soften a little bit. Think through where can be more shades. And now you can add even more contrast with raw sienna, the same which you used for the shades, but just for the bottom parts. We need to add weight to the pumpkin. I will rather take a little bit bigger brush, and, just more convenient. And as a final touch, let's add a few dry brush strokes of yellow in the direction of each part of our pumpkin. If your paper has some texture, as mine, it will organically create this nice light parts around. I'd like to add, oh, it's too bold, a little bit of shade in this part. And as I said, it's nice to add some details at this moment. I will use burnt sienna, so a little bit darker one. And I just add a few small little spots, but they will connect. They will add the volume to the pumpkin's tail. Right now you can have a look and see maybe some shading required at some points, but or some bulb maybe accidentally grew here, but I think you got the idea how to add these nice cute small bulbs into the pumpkin. Next one will be, so to say, cucumber, this pear shape, and I will dilute my green mix, and with the tip of the brush I will create the shape, the initial shape. This trick will help you to prepare yourself for painting. Let's just map out the part where the stem will be, and from here we just make a nice wash for the future pumpkin. Remember, sun shines from that direction, which means this is a little bit shady part here. Look how beautiful it distributes. Same on the bottom. These pumpkins, although they're very cute and just relaxing to paint, they're a great exercise of painting in different techniques. For example, wet and wet, like we're doing now, or practicing dry brush strokes. So don't take it too seriously, but also don't think that it is, just nothing important. It is, because you are practicing. You get to know your paper, you get to know your paints, and most important, you get used to the amount of water and paints what you will need. So this will be also a little bit darker. Don't afraid to add some contrast around. And now let's dry. No, let's actually add a few stripes. I use very dry color and with the tip of the brush I just create some lines, applying some pressure. Think through where will be the center of your pumpkin or cucumber, and then try to bring all these lines into that section, into that place, like this. Now you can add some splashes on your pumpkin. I will call everything what we are painting just pumpkins. I know that some of them were cucumbers or whatsoever. So just to make it a little bit simpler. Add some dots with the tip of the brush, and you will notice how different your the texture the paints distributes, whether it is dry area, for example, like here, or whether it is wet, whether it is still wet. Where the paper is still wet, you can add a little bit more of color. If you don't like something, you can just mask it with extra texture, with extra dots. Don't forget to make the bottom pretty bold and dark and heavy. Added more details on the top. It's one monochrome painting. And let's add some tail. I can see the tail in some bright yellows. Oh, my bright yellow mixed with green. Now it's not bright anymore. So let's add it. The shape is pretty complex, so let's make the tail simple. Firstly, I will just glaze the whole area of the tail of what I have. I will add, I will take raw sienna. It creates nice contrast, and I will add as a shade, and I will let it dry. Once it's all dry, it's good time to add details, and these long lines. Vary pressure on your brush. It will add nice unevenness, curviness. Dry brush, it's nice, always nice to use dry brush strokes in this case. And to make this connection a little bit more organic, let's add few green drops and texture around this tail part, maybe the middle, so it just will sit down organically on its place. If you like, you can add more and more and more details, just like this, with the tip of the brush pretty random, but it's nice to stop at a certain point. Now let's paint a big oval pumpkin with green texture on it, but underneath this green texture there will be a yellow background. So let's make our first wash with yellow. Always leave some space for the tail. Just create nice shape which will look like a pumpkin. Maybe it's another sort of pumpkin. And remember, here will be the most light part. You can emphasize a little bit the bottom with brighter color. Distribute evenly, just like this, and then let it all dry. While it's all drying, I will mix my green, cobalt green, with yellow to make this dirty olive color, and I will create a nice tile, probably with some twist around. Be creative. Firstly, as usual, add some very light wash into the stem part. Or for some reason I always want to call it a tail. It looks like a tail. So something like this. And we let it all dry. Now let's add the green texture. For green texture you can use any of your greens. I will use perlin green, maybe a little bit of cobalt green. Then I flatten my brush. I remove excess water on the paper towel, and with my brush, it's very similar to what we did before, but with more longer moves. Let's create this nice texture. I lift my brush a little bit before the end of the pumpkin to show the more yellowish bottom. It has more green color on the top part, and mostly yellow in the bottom. That's why I lift my hand while I move down. And remember, right part is in the shade, so therefore you can apply a little bit more of darker colors in that part. There are some more certain stripes, brighter stripes, and a little bit more of texture. Same in the front. I basically use the same brush but on different angles with different moves. That allows me to create different textures. Just like this. You can also add a little bit of yellow, moving your brush in the opposite direction. Dry brush strokes of yellow. With green color, I will add stripes, applying a little bit more pressure, less pressure, adding some bigger brush stroke in the moment of where it twists, and then it all changes the direction. You can add few spots of burnt sienna. It will look more organic and dry. And same here. You can soften a little bit everything with clean and damp brush, mostly, especially in the shady part. You can leave more crispiness and more contrast on the part which is close, which turn into the light, and add more of shades in the opposite part. Now let's organically connect with just small tipping moves. Let's connect the body to the stem and add a few defined brush strokes just with the tip of the brush. I add a little bit of round shape in the area where body connects to the pumpkin. Soften the colors. Nice green pumpkin. Let's paint very bright orange pumpkin, but we will start with yellow underneath. It has this narrow pot, and then it basically is turning into a round shape. It's very easy to paint when you prepare some sort of outline. Always add some unevenness to the shape, even if it looks round. Always nice to make it a little bit uneven, more organic. Then you just soften all these outlines. Remember here, about this part will be the lightest spot. And now you can making some corrections, want to move it a little bit. Now you can, while your paper is wet, let's start to add orange color right in the white part. This will be the brightest part. When you apply orange, also move your wrist and leave some spots in between. That will also give the idea of this very typical pumpkin structure. Here is the light spot. I skip this moment, this part. Just like this. I don't want to make it so bright, but I want to just soften the edges with my brush. Keep it very light, but not extremely white. I want to show that the texture of our pumpkin is pretty matte. You can now add a little bit of burnt sienna into the very bottom. By the way, let's paint the bottom. We can see it's a little bit tilted, so we can see this bottom part. A lot of shades happening here. Let's add a few splashes. That's nice. If you can also do it manually with the tip of your brush. And now let's paint a very funny top. I will use raw sienna for the tail, which will look like a hat. You will see it will look like this thing. Let's first prepare some diluted, very light underneath. While it all dry, let's add some shades, because once we put something on the top, that will prevent light getting into this part of the pumpkin and create really noticeable shade. Don't be afraid to add shade. Once you put some shade, once you really add some contrast, it will make your it will add nice volume, it will create nice contrast, so everything will suddenly look more natural. So don't be afraid to work with dark colors. There is a certain point which is also a little bit darker. Let's add a bit of orange part here. Soften the edges. And now we have very pretty, nice shape of our pumpkin. And let's finish the decoration part with stripes. It was a little bit too dry brush. When you apply the stripes, remember them to follow the shape of the object. Don't put them just vertical lines. They line organically on the object. Let's add a few darker parts. I think that's just my favorite part, to paint all these tails, small little details around. Let's add a few more textural ideas. Dry brush, and our bottom part disappeared, dissolved. Let's add it. Let's add a bit brightness here, and I think this is really nice. Some texture disappeared. I would like to add just few spots with my dry brush. I want to go around and add details, just like this. Now let's paint a white pumpkin from the top. And firstly, let's find the center of the pumpkin, and let's find a place for a stem. Now let's see, we will see it like this. And then you can even map out the future parts. And I use very diluted grayish greenish mix, and I just map out the outside, the shape of the pumpkin, which now it looks like a flower. And this is nice, and the sun shines from that side. That means this part is a little bit more in the shade, so you can apply a little bit more pressure on your brush when you paint the opposite side. So to say, now you divide your pumpkin into that parts. Keep in mind where it will be more in the shade, where it will be less in the shade. Then you can add even more darker color in the most shady part, which will be opposite to the place from which sun shines. I like when the paper is still wet. Paints, they distribute very organically, in a very natural way. you can add just an idea of some texture. We are painting very light, almost white pumpkins, so just few spots, just really just a few spots, and you can add some texture with very diluted mix, extremely very diluted mix. You can always add more darker details later on, but it would be very difficult to add lighter details. Therefore, we are very careful here. But to make a bright spot and to make it all shine, let's make really nice, bright and warm tail. I will use burnt sienna, raw sienna here, raw sienna and a little bit of burnt sienna. Very bright, very warm. It will make nice contrast between this cold grayish pot. Let's add a few more brush strokes and decorate the cut. And also always a nice idea to add few warm spots. That will bring nice, lovely contrast and freshness into the pumpkin area. Even if we paint white pumpkin, you see, we added few colors, and then it helped to pop up the white idea of the pumpkin. Now let's paint pretty simple shape. Let's start with the central part. Shape out the front part of the pumpkin, and then add more and more details around. Remember, there will be a place for a nice stem. And now the pumpkin itself will be yellow, and the places in between these parts, they will be orange. So I firstly prepare the yellow part, just some bright, brave brush strokes, and then with my orange I go in between these parts and add orange color, and I just help my colors flow around and distribute by themselves. Firstly, I prepare these big, so to say, dividers between pumpkin pots. A little bit less pressure on the brush, more pressure on the brush, because these dividers, color dividers, they are a little bit bigger in the bottom of the brush. And now with tipping moves you can go around and add some texture right on the yellow part. Move your wrist in different directions. Sometimes it's nice to make some shape, add some shape to your brush for nice dots. And now I wash my brush, and I want to do the same trick but with yellow. I take it a little bit bolder, that way I can paint yellow on yellow. Just adding this nice pumpkin structure. And let's add a little bit more brightness into the bottom. Brightness and boldness into the bottom. Like this. Pretty lovely. Now let's paint some nice, really nice stem. Let's paint in green. Let's firstly prepare greenish grayish mix, and let's turn it into this side. You can be very creative at this point. You can also make a twist here, like this. Just soften a little bit area, add shades, especially the darkest part is on the right. And underneath this twisted area, you can add some details while your paper is still wet, or just leave it for now. Have a look. Maybe it would be actually very nice to add just a few small little drops, spots of greenish color. It's nice to add some spots. If you see that your paper is wet somewhere, try to add these spots in that place, so it will distribute very organically, very nicely. And now let's add on the dry paper. Let's add more of dry brush strokes. A little bit more pressure on your brush, less pressure. And more pressure. Now let's paint a weird one which looks like a mushroom upside down. Let's find the top. Find the top. And then green. Always start with the middle part. And then you green, you create this upper part. A little bit more pressure on your brush when you approach in the bottom, like this. Soften. Maybe make some little bit of weird, shapy place here. And now comes the fun part. Let's slide our brush like this, like this, like this, and this is how we will create this upside down mushroom. Remember, this is also in the shade, so have to add a little bit more of darkness. First of all, in this part of the pumpkin, so to say, it consists of two parts, and then into the bottom part. And now you can just play around and add some texture. Just dragging out the colors. A nice moment to add some burnt sienna in between. Let's also make a small cut. Cut is not very important here, but still exists. So we just find a nice place right here. Now I think would be nice to add our dark green in the very bottom and in some parts of this arrangement. You can lift a little bit the colors in this bottom part just with dry and clean brush. I clean my brush after every brush stroke I'm making. That keeps my paper and my painting clean, just like this. Looks funny enough. Let's add a little bit more definition between some parts. Definitely here. Some texture. Now let's paint a pear-looking pumpkin or cucumber with yellow with green bottom. Now let's firstly set up how the general shape. Like this. How it lies on your garden, for example, or on your kitchen table. Firstly, we just set up nice cute shape, and then once you're happy with the shape, wash your brush, soften the area inside, and let's now add more shades. Let's create the volume. Sun shines from that side. This will be two lighter spots. So I firstly add yellow parts. This is two different shapes, so to say two balls connected to each other. Therefore, there is a shade in between them. And we just create this and this. Then I grab my perlin green. I love when watercolor just fly by itself. So once I have the moment, I just add few brush strokes, wet and wet. Around. And now, with the tip of the brush, I will start to arrange the decoration in the bottom of this pumpkin. So to say, I set up the idea, and then I just fill the bottom with my green color. I try to move my brush around according to the shape of the pumpkin, not just straight, but in these circle moves. We painted this part wet and wet, that's why it distributes so nicely. You can leave some yellow spots around, that's very nice. You can make few longer stripes. Remember, there is one ball, so the stripe will go like around here and then around here, so they would not go straight. Now the paper is getting dry and dry and dry. That allows us to add more texture with just dry brush strokes. You can add some random spots and dots around. And painting pumpkins, it's the biggest fun to play around with these textures. Looks pretty lovely. I would like to add just a small hint of orange for the variety. Soften it with tip of the brush. Apply it on the very top round. You see how all these little details, they changes the whole idea, that they make it really much more interesting. And now let's add some tail. It's pretty bright shape, so let's make the tail rather neutral. I will use my lighter color. I will just use raw sienna. I will set up the tail in the body of my pumpkin. Soften everything. Lift a little bit colors. And then I add a few brush strokes with burnt sienna. Just a few brush strokes. And especially in the side which is more in the shade. And I can add a hint of yellow in the shady part. And here we are. Thank you so much for painting with me. I hope you enjoyed the process. I'm looking forward to know what would you like to paint next. See you soon. Bye bye.